live?
We're live? Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Facebook Live Friday. I'm Todd with Caitlin and Amanda, and as always, and today we're joined by the Senior Vice President of Customer Care for Huntsville Utilities, John Olszewski. And if you've watched our show in the past, you know that we have a lot of fun on this show. We talk about things related to what's going on in the world of utilities and efficiency and safety and such, but we were looking at the calendar when we noticed we were going to have a show that fell on September 11th. None of us really felt like that was the tone our show needed to take today. We're still going to talk about some fun things at the end of the show, but for the main topic of discussion, we thought, well, let's just talk about what this day means to us. The four of us here, we're all in different stages of life on 9/11. I was a new parent. Amanda just graduated college.
It was my last year.
Last year of college.
Yep.
Caitlin was in elementary school.
Yeah.
And Colonel Olszewski was still in the Army. So this is an event that, of course, impacted all of us, but impacted all of us in different ways. And so we want to make today's show about that. And I'll just kind of start things off. The thing that I remember about, there are a couple of things I always think about on 9/11, but one of the things I always remember is just the disbelief as this was unfolding, that something like this could be happening. And the thing that, at the time, we lived in Missouri, and I had a job at a TV station where I didn't have to be at work till 10 o'clock in the morning. And my wife, who you've heard me mention before, is a nurse. She had to be at work much earlier, and our son was like just over a year old at the time. And so I was playing around in the floor with him, and my wife didn't even make it out of the driveway before she called and said, "You might want to turn the TV on, something's going on." And she said, they're saying on the radio that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. And I said, "Oh, that can't be right." I said it must have been like, some guy in his little private plane, maybe he had a medical emergency. She said, "No, they're saying a commercial airliner." And I said, I remember saying this. I said, "No way. No." I said, "There's no way a pilot messes up like that."
Right.
And if the fog had been that thick, they would have let him fly. I said, "You misunderstood something." She said, "Well, something's going on." I turned on the TV to the station that I worked for, and across the bottom of the screen it said "planes," plural, "strike the World Trade Center." And I started flipping around, and I think when I got to CNN, they were replaying the footage of the second plane. And at that point, we all know what happened after that. And as surprising and, just being dumbstruck by the whole thing, the thing that surprised me even a little bit more was after I got to work, and the CBS took over. All the networks took over their affiliates and said, "You guys, we're running the show." And basically, if you worked at the local TV station on 9/11, you just sat there and watched TV for 3 days because the networks literally took over. And but I remember watching it, and then to me the thing that was even more surprising was the third plane, because you had the first two planes, and you think, this wasn't the first time the World Trade Center had been targeted. There had been the truck bombing a few years prior to that. And so you think two towers, two planes, still doesn't make sense, but I guess in your mind you try to and then when the third plane hit the Pentagon, I remember thinking, when's this going to end? We're just getting started. And then you had the fourth plane, which initially there were reports that the fourth plane had crashed at Camp David, because there was a lot of misinformation and incorrect reporting that day, which you can understand. And then they, figured we heard what happened with the heroes on Flight 93. And I remember standing next to a reporter who worked there after the fourth plane, and she said, "When's it going to stop?"
Right.
And so that's the thing that gets me, is just how dumbstruck everybody was during that. And when I was my wife and I were having dinner with some friends of ours a week or so later, and they were expecting their first child. And even at that point in time, we were already hearing phrases like the post 9/11 world and the new normal, which we're hearing again.
Yeah.
And I remember we talked about it, and I said, the thing that makes me sad is that my son, and now my other son and my daughter, and their children, and anybody who was born after that, to them, there's not going to be a post 9/11 world. There's just the world. This is the world they live in. They don't know what it was like before.
Right.
And now, to a degree, you can almost argue that we don't know what it was like before, because 19 years, which seems impossible when you say it out loud, because in many ways those wounds are still raw.
Right.
But those are the things that I think about on that.
Wow.
Who wants to go next?
Well, I was in Korea, and 1999 in Korea, I was a battalion commander, and I'm getting goosebumps here starting to talk about it. When you're in Korea, you think you're going to war. Back then, pre 9/11, thought you were going to war with North Koreans, and you never know what day it was. You never knew when that day is. So we trained like we were going to war every day. Fight tonight was one of our mottos. Get ready to go to war. So, in 2 years I commanded my battalion, and it was I came out of command in July of 2001, and I went up to become the Division G4, and not to make your head hurt, except to say that's the guy that's responsible for all the logistics of everything that goes on in a division. And a division that has tons of helicopters and M1 tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles, and I was responsible for all the logistics. My team was phenomenal. When we were moseying around doing our normal every day and this stuff hit, we thought we were going to war against the North Koreans. We hunkered down. We went into battle ready. We went full up gear. Gates got shut down. Korean police went away, and our guys took over the gates. 27 installations, I think, is what we had in Korea at the time. And we thought we were going to war, and we had good TV stuff coming through. We had our own channels, and then the Pentagon got hit and all that, but we still really didn't know the deal. And I'll never forget. And my wife was in Seoul, so now you got where your wife is, and all these guys that work for me and guys and gals that work for me. None of their wives or family members were there. They're all in the States. And if you're and then who was flying at that time, and who was going on, and that was an intense time, and we had just had an incident in Korea where one of our AVLBs, our bridges that we put across rivers, that was being drugged, and it ran over a kid like right before that, and there was already hatred towards us at the time. We didn't do anything wrong. Our military didn't do anything wrong. Kid was in a place he shouldn't have been, but you know how that sells. And so we had all that going on, and then the 9/11 hit, and so it was rock. But the negative was it all happened. The positive was we realized how good we really were, because I had never seen, except in my Germany days when I was in the 80s, when I thought we were going to war against the Russians, man, it was showtime. And the kids kids to me, I mean, I'm old now, but I was in my 40s then, and it was just powerful. That's all I can say. It was you had to find out where everybody was, but then once you got that locked down, you were pretty good to go. And then our task is, I can't play around with that. We thought we had a whole different game plan.
Right.
So anyway, that's how I remember it.
You want me to go next?
Sure.
I had flown back from Seattle the night before, and my flight had been delayed, and so I got in pretty late, and I was, obviously adjusting to the time zone. So when I woke up, my dad, I was at my dad's house, and he always leaves the TV on constantly, and so when I woke up, I could hear the TV going, and I kind of looked at it, and I was like, I've just got to be dreaming. I mean, I was just at the airport, and then I did the same thing of trying to figure out where people were. We were all, so my college was just coming back from being, I guess, on some sort of break, or maybe I think we were on the quarter system. I'm not sure, but I wasn't back in Savannah yet. I'd flown into Huntsville, and then I was going to drive back to Savannah for classes. And so I was trying to get a hold of friends. I had my roommate, her boyfriend at the time actually worked at the towers, and he had not gone into work. And it took a while for her to track him down. But yeah, it was different, and the whole day was just like a fog. I mean, it was just like, I mean, I can remember everything, but I just felt like I was in a cloud of dust.
Now, was your father still in the military at this time?
He had already retired.
You retired in 95.
Yeah, he was working as a contractor, but he was out. But he was still on Redstone a lot. I think they closed Redstone.
He did.
Yeah.
Actually, at the time, Redstone was considered an open post. You could
That's
drive. You
right.
could drive across Martin Road, and
Wow.
you know, David Champney's always messing with me. When can I open up that gate so when he comes across, he can, you know, so easy. Well, I can't do it. I
Yeah.
mean, and I couldn't do it when I was even the man. But the
Right.
point is, it used to be an open post. That's
Yeah.
you know, you post 9/11, you
Right.
such a great opening because these kids today don't know what it's like to go to an airport that didn't have anybody checking you.
Yeah.
Right.
You could go to the gate and meet somebody
At
coming
the
home.
gate.
I can remember being little, and my dad didn't go on a lot of business trips, but when he would come back, you know, you could walk right up to the gate and greet him coming off the plane.
Yeah.
And well, you don't know that, Caitlin, do you?
Oh no, I do. I actually remember as a kid. So one of my grandmothers, she lived in D.C. and worked for a government agency there, and so I remember flying back. My brother and I and my parents, we flew back from D.C. and my grandmother and my then step grandfather at the time were able to wave us off at the gate in D.C. And so, but yeah, for me that day completely just altered my life. I was in 4th grade.
Wow.
And when everything was going on, our teacher had, you know, a TV in the classroom, and so she brought the TV, turned it on, we were watching what was happening, and my first thought was, you know, when the plane hit the Pentagon was, oh my gosh, where's my grandmother? Because at the time she worked in the Pentagon. So I remember sitting in my mom's office waiting to hear about, you know, where my grandmother was. Apparently she was on Capitol Hill that day trying to get people to evacuate because, you know, they thought the Capitol was going to be the next target. And then come to find out, actually just this past year, my uncle worked at the Pentagon at the time, and he was going into work, driving right past it and saw the plane fly into the building. So for me personally, it changed the trajectory of my family's life because my dad was one of the first boots on the ground in Afghanistan in 2001. I remember the day that he was called and told that he was being deployed. My brother and I were sitting in the den watching TV. My mom came in, just tears all down her face, and my dad even looked upset, and I was like, what is happening? And he told us that he was being deployed. And you know, 1 year in Afghanistan, 1 year in Iraq, and it taught me. I mean, I already appreciated the military because my dad is in the Army. Well, was in the Army, he's retired now. I already appreciated our men and women in uniform, but it gave me an even greater appreciation for them, and it actually really taught me what it is to be patriotic. And so it opened my eyes to, at a young age, a perspective on what is going on in the world that I didn't even think or didn't even come across to me. And so to think, you know, in 4th grade, you know, you start having to think about international politics, and it ended up, like I said, changed the trajectory of my family's life because my dad at that time, he was part-time as National Guard Reserve, so he wasn't full-time military, was a director for Young Life in Gadsden, and just through, you know, his experiences over there, ended up becoming a lawyer right before his second tour in Iraq, and it just, I don't know, it taught us all about what it is, or the importance of public service and, you know, doing things for your country and asking not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for it.
Absolutely.
And so my brother is now in the military, actually recently, not too long ago, stationed in Korea. He was deployed to Korea. So yeah, it was one of those days where, like you were, I was just kind of like, what is happening? Just kind of in a fog.
Yeah.
Well, it's
and-
interesting you bring up the that time frame, and I wrote. Well, you helped me, and Gary helped me write a letter for my thoughts on the world and our linemen, water and gas
Right.
guys out in the field, and how we respect it. It's driven by this day. And if you think about, I'm goosebumps again, it's driven by this day, because pre 9/11, no disrespect to the world, but nobody really gave a crap about the military. Vietnam, you got the crap kicked out of you when you came back from Vietnam. Those guys and gals were forgotten people. They were spit on when they came home. And then we had a little kick up there at Desert Storm, Desert Shield, but it was only one day, so it was kind of written off as no big deal.
Right.
And then 9/11 hit. And then everywhere you go, everybody's loving on you. Everybody's appreciating you. The world changed. You go in an airport and people are buying you drinks, and you're on an airplane. Somebody buys you dinner, or it doesn't matter where you go. And so it woke up the world for the appreciation of military. Now this is just the opposite of what the article is about. The article is me trying to tell the story of how this world, these guys that work for us, it was a world where the only people that ever got thanked was police and firemen. Well, the military got the heyday, but the firemen and police officers, you think about that day, they got a special place in everybody's heart, because the greatest pictures and the greatest scenarios you ever seen are up there where they had to deal. And the one piece I can't, because I'm afraid I won't get to say it before this day's up, I got to say this. I went to the Pentagon after I left Korea, and my assignment was in the G4. That's where the plane hit. So I was there in I got there in June, July of '02. And they were still, that part of the building was still closed off, and that had not been renovated completely yet. And it was a year later, well, not a year later, it was close to a year later, but it was still and these people that I got to go work with were there, and they got to tell their stories. The chaplains, the logistics guys, the Lieutenant General Mahan, who was one of my daddies, that, it was, I got to go to work in a building that got hit 10 months prior. So anyway.
The thing that I always say, or that I always think about 9/11, and like I said, it affected us all in different ways. We all had different reactions to it. We all marked this day in different ways. But the thing that I always, I don't want to say I worry about, but the thing that I wonder about in regards to 9/11, 9/11 always makes me think of Pearl Harbor.
December 7th.
And every generation has a date like this. For my grandparents, it was December 7th. For my parents, it was November 22nd, 1963, in the Kennedy assassination. Prior to 9/11, for my generation, it was the Challenger explosion.
Yep.
It seems like we have a lot more dates now than we used to.
Yeah.
But when December 7th rolls around every year, we're nearly 80 years removed from Pearl Harbor, and people say, yeah, this was Pearl Harbor Day, but you don't see the outpouring of remembrances that you see, that we're even seeing today, 19 years later after 9/11. If you've been watching, we keep the news on in here, and we've seen several live shots of what's going on in New York and in DC and Pennsylvania. But for the most part, when December 7th rolls around every year, we acknowledge it. You might see it mentioned on the news a few times. It got a lot of mention when we hit the 75th anniversary a few years ago. And so the thing that I wonder about is, will there be a time in this country when generations from now, September 11th rolls around, and it's a very similar reaction? It's like, oh yeah, this is the day that thing happened. Now, I'm not saying every September 11th that there should be...
A carpet rolled out.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that we should all just stop what we're, shut the day down, basically, and that there should be a national day of mourning that lasts. I'm not saying that. But, for those of us, because there aren't that many people from Pearl Harbor left.
Right.
There will be a time when those of us who were alive on 9/11, there won't be many of us left.
Right.
At what point will it just be another historical date? Now, granted, we have a complete video record from multiple sources of what happened. Not like Pearl Harbor, where we do have some footage, but we watched this unfold on live TV.
We did.
Which nobody did on December 7th. And so that's the thing I wonder about. Will there, I hope it won't be this way. I hope that there will always be a time where we as a nation observe a moment of silence or something to mark the day.
Yeah.
But it's one thing for us to say as a nation we're going to do this. If you don't keep that feeling in your heart as citizens of the country, and we say never forget every year.
was the first.
Will we ever forget?
The issue, and I pray that people will always.
I'm with
But
you.
I'll share this with you though, and this isn't meant negative. It's just Hawaii is not continental United States.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They attacked our land,
Yeah.
our continent.
Yeah.
That was an attack on our continent.
Right.
That had not happened since I don't know when. You know, when the Brits came. You
Yeah.
take it way back. And
Yeah.
hitting Hawaii was still our world.
Yeah, it wasn't a state then,
You
but,
know,
yeah.
but you know, our soldiers and our airmen and our
Right.
but you know this. So I'm not trying not to compare the two, except they are compared.
That was a
because I think-
military thing, whereas this was not a military.
It was not, but it'll always be something that every president, Democrat or Republican, have said, we take the fight to them.
Yeah.
So we're always debating this. Why do we have this many soldiers overseas? Why do we have all this? Well, the argument is we take the fight to them. We don't want anybody ever to come to us again.
You're right.
We're not in the classified world anymore. I'm not. I'm speaking out of past life, but I believe the numbers are astronomical of the things that we stop today that we don't even know about.
Oh, I agree with you.
That we don't even know about this happening in our country. That's how good we've gotten. But all that to say, what a great thought. I think that, but not as deep as, because I was thinking December 7th when you said it, and I kind of went, whoa, he just said what I was thinking, because how do we view that?
Yeah.
Well, it's whatever you do to mark this day, take a moment to mark it. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your thoughts on this. Has anybody? Do we have any comments or anything?
No comments.
Those of you watching this, if you're watching this, and we know we get a lot more watches of this show when it's not live than when it's live, because most of you guys are at work. We get that, but this is when we have time to do the show. So this is when we do the show. So, please, we invite you to share your comments below and your thoughts about it. For a lot of people, it's a very cathartic experience, and we hope we can help with that. Like I said, this is going to be a slightly different show, but we are still going to do our lightning round, where we talk about some of the things that have happened this week. The post, our social media post that really resonated with you guys this week was we posted some pictures from the devastation going on in California. That's terrible things going on out there. And we certainly give our thoughts to the firefighters out there who are, I saw video of a firefighter working out there, and it's like the whole state was on fire behind him. And I thought, talk about a guy who, here's this guy just doing what he can.
Right.
And it looks like he's fighting the world, trying to put this fire out.
Yeah.
But besides those people who are out there fighting the fire, as soon as they get the fires out, the utility people have to come in behind them. And get the power going again, get all the utilities going again. And so we posted some pictures of that, and so.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because it goes back to the article that you helped me with. We all think, when we think 9/11, we think firefighters and police officers.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the people that were helping, but we don't think about the linemen, the water guys, and the gas guys, because that whole facility was full of all that.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did you cut the power off? And where was that lineman running? Where was that water guy running? Where was that? I never even, that was the whole point of the article, I never even thought about this space of what our guys and gals do for us in this outfit that we do every day that I wasn't even thinking of it. That was the whole point of it. And it's even more dynamic in this environment, because when you think about, DR and her safety world, think about all the safety issues going on in this zoo of the world, and the concrete falling, and the electrical lines, and water, and fire hydrants getting cut off. I mean, it's an amazing environment.
Yeah, and it's one of those things you don't think about until there's a problem with it.
Absolutely.
And a couple of interesting news stories that popped up this week. You may have seen this. The moon is rusting, apparently, despite having no naturally occurring water or oxygen. A new study published in Science Advances states the Indian Space Research Organization has discovered hematite, which is a type of iron oxide or rust at the poles of the moon, and scientists don't know why. So my question for everyone on the panel is, could it be because we've been too lax about bringing the moon inside when it rains?
You did that without smiling, Todd.
Has anybody seen this article?
I have, but I didn't think of it the way you did, though.
Yeah, no,
Because I remember leaving my bike out once when I was a little kid, and that's how I learned about what rust was my dad's saying, well, you shouldn't have left it out in the rain.
Yeah.
And here's kind of a funny story, something we found yesterday. A man in Leamington Spa, England, was asked by his wife to buy a garden gnome for their backyard. Instead, he bought a 12-foot-long, 200-pound Tyrannosaurus Rex replica and had it installed while his wife was away. It cost this was in England, so it cost 1,600 pounds, which comes out to just over $2,000. And you should Google it because it really looks
Yes.
lifelike. It's impressive to see. My question is this man the greatest husband of all time?
Well, if you would finish that article and you come to find out that the wife didn't find out until in the middle of the night she was taking out the dog, the security floodlights came on, and then all she saw was she was face to face with a T-Rex. So
And it's really impressive looking.
It
I
is
mean, you
really
gotta look at
impressive.
this. It's
and he had it tucked in the bushes.
yeah,
So
like
it
it's
was
creeping
coming out
around
of
the
the
corner.
bushes.
It looks like something.
So the answer is no.
I want one.
In that moment, yeah.
I
But the
absolutely
greatest
want
part
one now.
is he named it, and he named
yeah.
it Dave.
Dave the dinosaur.
Dave the dinosaur.
It's really cool looking. So I highly suggest Googling that and checking it out. And before we wrap up the show, I want to give a shout out to St. Louis Cardinal Nation and baseball fans everywhere because we're mourning the passing of Lou Brock, who passed away this week at the age of 81. He was battling several illnesses. He was traded to the Cardinals, ironically, from the Chicago Cubs, their arch rival in 1964. And was the centerpiece of a team that went on to win 2 World Series championships. And, of course, he was baseball's stolen base king. He surpassed Ty Cobb, and he had 938 steals, and he held that record until Rickey Henderson took it from him in 1991, and he was a staple of the St. Louis community. And our thoughts to the Brock family. I used to work with Lou Brock's niece, actually.
Well, you'll find out if Ted Phillips watches the program, because if he...
We wished him a happy birthday when it was his birthday a couple of
So
Fridays.
we'll have to find out. Well, if he doesn't call you today, I will harass him
Okay.
because when you're talking about the Cardinals, I mean, all I can picture
Oh,
him
yeah,
with his
yeah.
mask on right now, and it's tight fitting, and him being a Cardinal fan.
So before we wrap this up, anybody want to add before we say goodbye to the fine folks at home?
As always, just on this day, I think I did it last year, but just a big thank you to our men and women in uniform. Y'all do a lot. You have to be away from your families. And so just thank you for all you do. Thank you for keeping us safe. Thank you for fighting and securing our freedom every day. So for those who are military families, I've been there, and thoughts go out to you as well. And so thank you for being supportive and being behind our men and women in uniform.
Everybody at the table here comes from a military background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Colonel and I both served. Your father, your husband, both
Yep.
military. Your father. A lot more people out there than you realize have
Yeah.
some sort of connection to the military. It's not an easy job, and in many ways, the actual fighting part of it isn't necessarily the hardest part of the job. At times, it's like you've talked about in this job before. It's not a job; it's a lifestyle.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle.
And it's something that sticks with you. Further, in my case, it turned my life around. Actually, not that I was, headed to jail or anything, but I had some growing up to do.
Yeah.
And it helps you get there. So, so reiterating what Caitlin said, yeah, thanks for saying that, and thank you for watching. Of course, if you have any comments or questions or topics you'd like to see in a future episode, put that in the comments below. We will be back next week with a regular show, and we'll probably decide what the topic is on Thursday night. That tends to be what we do this year lately, although we knew about this one ahead of time.
Yes.
So until next time, for Caitlin, Amanda, the Colonel, and myself, thank you for watching, and remember, you can't spell utilities without you.
I like that.
Probably should have given Amanda a heads up to run over to the camera real quick before I
Run
close
underneath.
out the show.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
That was fun.
I'm glad you liked it.
Appreciate that. Oh, wow. That was really cool.
Thank you, sir.